executive at Office of Career Services, and we are really pleased to have you all here for the session of AI, ML, and Analytics, Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning, two of the most emerging topics of technology, which have taken the center stage of all the conversations everywhere and have the potential of bringing in the revolution. So, today, through this session, we aim to shed light on AI, ML, and analytics, and we have our celebrated leaders, Mr. Vivekanand Vellanki, Director of Dremio, a data engine that can enable analytics almost everywhere. Also, we have with us Mr. Rajan Nagina. He's the founder of Number Theory, AI data science company, and he's also the alumnus of IIM Kolkata. Also, we have with us Mr. Arvind Jha, creator of New Gen Software and alumnus of IIT Kharagpur. We are glad to have you all here. Thank you for being with us. Also, with us, we have Mr. Mukesh Batra. He's the director of MarketScope, a 30-year-old company and a career mentoring firm focused on tech leadership hiring. He's also an IIT Delhi alumnus. He has built up a panel of 150 domain experts in IT, telecom, analytics, finance, engineering, and many more sectors for career mentoring the students and young minds. And he will be carrying the session forward with us. So over to you, Mr. Batra.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you, Chinmaya, for giving us this opportunity. So, to begin with, I would like to share that we have a esteemed panel of Arvind, Rajan, and Vivek. They are the data guys. They are the data doctors. They are the data practitioners. And we are users of data. And all of us in the COVID scenario, we could understand what is the power of data. When we were all sitting at home, what is it that led to correcting the scenario, minimizing pain, if not making it zero, minimizing pain, the power of data. For example, I was COVID ridden. I was helping my colleagues, my schoolmates, my IIT batchmates through various WhatsApp groups. And data was the thing which helped us frame a policy of how to correct the scenario. Also, data was the main thing, main element in the extent of execution. How many oxygen cylinders are there? How many beds? How many hospitals? Which equipment? So, data is like a child, and various stakeholders, the way they handle it, some may take it to the next level, some may take it to the next level as a service, some may use it as a product to minimize the pain of the ordinary citizen. Like in COVID, there's an area which is very close to my heart, which is called governance automation. Average citizen getting benefit through use of technology, whether it's AI, ML, analytics. So now I would leave it to the data practitioners and the data experts, whether AI comes first, ML comes first, analytics come first. I am a data user, I'm an ordinary citizen. I want to see the power of data, take it to the next level. And all of us at the end of the session, we would answer questions that how do we create a cadre of data professionals? How do we create a cadre of data scientists? How do we create a cadre of analytics professionals? So over to you, Arvind. All of them will share their journeys, and we will have our set of learnings from their journeys, their applications, and then we decide, and all of us decide, which part of the data or which step of that journey we would like to be a part of. Over to you, Arvind.
Hey, thanks so much, Mukesh. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me here, and thanks also to IIT Delhi for inviting us here. AI/ML is a very, very attractive, very, very interesting area. I remember, when I was at Kharagpur IIT, 1985, 86, I was graduating. One of my final year projects was building a Prolog compiler, and Prolog was the language like Lisp that was supposed to be used for artificial intelligence. So pretty much I've been fascinated with artificial intelligence since I would say in my college years. And then when I started working, one of my stints was as a knowledge engineer. So I had a card which had a knowledge engineer. I remember I showed it to my mother-in-law, and she said, "This guy is a fraud. There's nobody called a knowledge engineer. There are mechanical engineers and electrical engineers." So she tried to dissuade her daughter from getting married to me, but fortunately for me, my conviction skills were still strong. I was able to convince her that knowledge engineer is a real job. So we used to build expert systems for Tata Steel and Tata Chemicals and large companies at that point of time, very early on. And then AI pretty much died. For 15 years, we call it the winter of AI. Pretty much died till the time that, some very smart people showed us that, neural networks uh, can be used to really start to model how brains work and how search happens, for example. And once they were able to demonstrate that, in terms of recognizing images, that contest that they won, neural networks is a very powerful thought. I would say since 2015 or so, AI has been some of the hottest kind of areas. You see the amount of PhD papers that are coming out of AI. And if you look at GPT-3 and what it can do today in terms of recognizing text, generating programming, all kinds of interesting things. So I know you talked to Mukesh about data. Of course, data is at the heart of anything that you do with AI. But as we go along, hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about, the journey from data to analytics to AI and all kinds of things that, students who are listening in should aspire to learn and believe in. And we'll be happy to take questions and tell them how they can structure their own career. I see for the next 10 years or 20 years, pretty much everything that we were going to do will have some kind of AI model, some kind of AI need, and there'll be, ubiquitous AI everywhere. So I'll stop there, give a chance to Rajan perhaps to join in, and maybe Vivek as well to say something, and then we can come back and look at some specifics. Rajan, you want to take over?
Sure, Arvind. I think, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. Uh, Let me start sharing how I see or how I started seeing data. And probably that was also the genesis of number theory. There's some background noise, not from here, I'm sure. So during 2016, that was a time when, so if I just take the clock a little back, and say 2008, 9, 10 was a time when the whole world was moving around, building things around Hadoop. That was a time when Hadoop came in, Cloudera got built. Uh, and we started seeing how this whole data, which was essentially captured in various data systems, moving towards this buzzword called big data. And then you have large companies got built around big data, Cloudera being the largest one at that time, uh, building whole ecosystem around Hadoop and whatnot. While that journey still continues in many form, and probably Vivek would shed more light on the whole journey of how do you structure that data, how do you store it, how do you start making it ready for to monetize in various forms. The second part of this data journey is how do you process data. One is how do you make data available that is ready for processing, and I will let Vivek talk about it. Probably he is the one who will know more than that. My experience, both in terms of aspiration that I wanted to build something in that, which is number theory, and also as an opportunity, which is going to be very long-term opportunity. It's a beginning of a wave which is going to be very long. The form will change, of course, but the way we are going to look at data, the way we are going to look at processing that data and monetizing that data to make it a decision system, so much so that it start impacting the very business model of companies. A bank wanting to provide loan in, let's say, 60 seconds. That's the paradigm shift in business model. Underlying, there are many things that happen around the data management, processing, and whatnot. But the way data is being looked at now and the way data is being processed now across industries, whether it's banking or healthcare or enable us to create business insights and embed them within systems to make better decisions for ordinary citizens, for organizations, for governments. But the way you look at data and process it has been changing tremendously. I think there are a couple of waves that is driving it, and I lead up to say that, and as we grow, students, professionals, we have choices to make. One is look at data as a processing element itself. And when you start processing very large amount of data, the science changes. So how do we process that large amount of data to make meaningful value out of data? The second element is how do we look at data from a very mathematics insight point of view? What algorithms, what logic, what set of uh, uh, things that we apply to create meaningful data? So one part is a scale. Second is how do we manage this meaning out of it through algorithms? And these could be video processing, image processing, structured data, whatnot, many forms, deep learning, machine learning, NLP, and whatnot. The third is being the confluence of someone being at the place where one can understand data, but also have a little bit of understanding of a particular domain. Someone understands banking and then apply data or data science per se to solve a problem in banking or healthcare or something. So there are many such fields exist. I think it is upon us to make those choices whether you want to solve a scale problem, and I'm only talking about processing, whether you want to solve this processing at a scale problem, you want to solve the fundamental code data science problem to create better insights, you want to be the one who can look at data and some domain and create meaningful insights. All of the choices that one has to make, obviously, as one grows in their professional careers. I think for us as number theory, it was important to build something, and that journey still continues, that makes this whole data processing, especially from a data science perspective, easier and intuitive for people. There are people who would look at data and solve it through a very studio-driven environment, or there are people who would like to write their own code and build these models. What we provide, what we essentially build and still building, is that studio wherein you can experiment with variety of algorithms. You can experiment at a scale and let the system figure out, or you could be the one who could figure out within the system what is best outcome from that data and then deploy it. So I'll stop here. It may be a little abstract at the moment, but as we move forward and the questions become more clear, we'll drill down in those areas. But I'll stop here and would love to hear from Vivek.
Yeah. Hi, thanks everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and address the students. So my journey, I graduated from IIT Madras in 1993, and as the previous speaker said, I've seen the winter of AI, right? I mean, like my batchmates built expert systems as projects, and we saw the winter of AI. I've been, I would say, very much involved in designing and building systems that can store large amounts of data and process large amounts of data. 2010, that time I quit my job at a big company and I joined a startup, Mapr, which was building Hadoop, right? If you heard of, so Hadoop brought a very big innovation to data, where it said, you don't need, it provided a way to store data at scale, reliably, not losing data. And once it was there, I think in a couple of years, people said, hey, data is great, but we don't deal with files. Nobody deals with files, right? What we want is a database. We want a mechanism to analyze data and do stuff with data. And that's when I think everything changed, and people came up with Spark and different ways of processing data, analyzing data, and there are many mechanisms, right? Hive, Spark, and a lot of tools came about. I would say we are now at a stage where we've gone past Hadoop as an industry. Cloud, which is Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, they have kind of replaced Hadoop in a sense, and they're essentially doing what Hadoop does, right? Uh, Allow you to store huge amounts of data at very low cost. But then the problem is still the same, right? I want to be able to analyze the data. And I think there were many mechanisms that came up, and one is, like people pointed out, a programmatic way. I know what my data is, I will write a program, I will do stuff with it, right? And while that was good, people were still unhappy with that approach because it was not fast enough, right? I remember when I was in MapR, people used to say, hey, if we want to analyze our data, we have to sit with a team of developers, explain to them what we want, and wait for them to write the program so we see the result, which was like a week or 2 weeks, right? So that's when I think a lot of tools started coming up and saying, you know what, everybody understands SQL. Can we use SQL as the language of choice to analyze data? And that's when the notion of let's look at data on the cloud as a table, not as a bunch of files, and be able to run SQL queries on tables in the cloud, right? And I think that's where the way I look at it, we are in the analytics space, so that's clearly where I see the industry moving. There are open source projects and companies that are moving in this direction, where people are uploading huge amounts of files to the cloud, and they want to treat it as a table and query and run SQL queries on it. So my takeaway, I think, combining what people have said before me, is that there are like multiple types of data, like data analysis people want to do. One set of use cases can be processed by SQL, right, which is good, and it's fast, and anybody can do it. But there are another set of use cases which may be related to image recognition or whatnot, which is really hard to do using SQL. And I think that's so that's where AI and ML and all that comes in. And I see both types of analysis, going ahead next 5-10 years. I see both of them been there. I would expect some kind of migration from because end of the day, SQL is easy to use, right? I mean, you don't need a developer to write a program for you. End of the day, because SQL is easier, I expect some of these things to become more queryable using SQL, and people start using that more. But I still see a huge amount of people continuing to use AI/ML tools and Spark and whatnot to query their data on the cloud. So I'll stop at that. And we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I had muted myself. So I would thanks Vivek. I would request Rajan to share his journey of entrepreneur, and then how you created the Wow, and what triggered you to become an entrepreneur, and how your if I can use the word, your journey has impacted the life of an ordinary citizen. If you could just throw some light on that, and then we will move to the next level of questioning.
Sure, Mukesh. So I'll extend what Vivek said, and probably that was the genesis. You being at MapR, and I mentioned Cloudera. Probably both these revolutions started almost at the same time. MapR, Cloudera, Hortonworks came a little later. Those were the things that we were witnessing. Sitting in India, but still there was some appreciation about how the data at a scale are being used and also being processed using technology like MapReduce and whatnot. Then Spark came, and Spark was a sort of exponential benefit in terms of technology. It was an order of magnitude that you can process that data, not only store it cheaply, but rather also process very fast. And that was a very serious opportunity, because before that I was also involved in building a business around analytics. I think there is this, some experience essentially pushes you towards a direction in life. Arvind calls it happy accidents. Probably that was my happy accident. I was trying to build a business where I was working around analytics. Well, when Spark came in, there was this realization that came to us that, you know what, you can actually build a business around Spark only if you can make it easier for people. Just like SQL is very easy for people to query. Data scientists need a little more than querying. Data scientists need the ability to experiment with variety of modeling techniques. And it become a little more sort of mathematics oriented. And I think at that time, that realization that one can build a company around Spark in machine learning, thinking of if you can use that base layer as open source and build something on top of that, just like what Red Hat does for Linux. You know, you have this base layer of Apache Linux, and you are building it, make it more user friendly and whatnot. For that, you can do similar thing around machine learning. You have this machine learning Spark available, and can you build things around the Spark to make it much easier for people? And that's what we did. I met my brilliant co-founder, who probably understood Spark way more than me, and I certainly was trying to build a business around analytics. So that was meeting of these two minds, wherein there is one person who certainly understands this technology world quite well, and there's one person who sort of has some experience of building a business around things. And we could see it very clearly that this is a business that's worth building. You know, people are going to use Spark or technology like that to process data. So we sort of sat down, and then the whole entrepreneurial journey of their own iterations, micro pivoting, building the first MVP, which was essentially black screen driven, making the first sale, raising some money, scaling that. All of this happened over a period of time. We also recently got acquired by Newgen Software. So from an entrepreneurship cycle, it's in a way, in part ways, it is complete. Thinking of an idea, raising some money, building a team, building a product, got the initial set of customers, building that GTM motion and whatnot around that, and then got acquired by a large company like Newgen, and then essentially continuing the same thing but at a larger scale, because you have large investment available for R&D, a bigger sales structure, both in terms of geographies and presence investment available, scaling up the whole product and the GTM journey for the same. I think I'll mention one more point and maybe take some of this. It also means that, you know, if you look at AI, and we're talking about AI as AI itself, as we're discussing AI itself as an opportunity, whether it's a technology opportunity, a career opportunity, a business, these are opportunities. And we getting acquired by Newgen itself talks about the opportunities that organizations are willing to tap. Generally, if you see product company acquisition is a very nascent thing within India. It's not like really too many happening. It happens generally in B2C, but not in B2B product space. It's not as many. But it also talks about the willingness of organizations, companies, to invest in these technologies, in these teams, because they say because they see such a vast potential at this to be able to impact customers, their customers and whatnot. And that means it also translates into huge professional career opportunities. These are cutting edge, and companies are making really large bets into these because it's just the beginning and it will change. But yeah, so I wanted to put that opportunity point also.
Yeah, that's very important, and that's a very relevant point. So I will go back to Vivek and ask him that which is the next Hadoop equivalent opportunity, which Mapr did at that point of time. How do you look at the market scenario from disruption point of view?
I think if you look at the evolution, right? So we could maybe talk a little bit back in time about what Google did and how it drove all of this, right? I think we miss Google in this discussion. So I consider Google published 3 papers, very important papers. One was called Google File System, which is essentially Hadoop, which got made by open source into Hadoop. Then they built something called NoSQL databases. They called it Big Table, and that's what drove HBase, Cassandra, Mongo, and everything in that ilk. And the third paper they wrote was a paper called Dremel. Dremel is essentially what Dremio is building in the open source world, which is basically allowing you to look at a collection of files and data and treat them as a table and be able to analyze that. What has since happened in the open source industry and in the open source projects, if you go look at things like Apache Iceberg or Delta Lake, which is done by Databricks, or Project Nessie, I would consider 3 of them very important projects. 2 of them, Iceberg and Delta Lake, are kind of trying to formalize a notion of a table, right? And I talk about this because we talk about SQL, and for SQL to do stuff, it needs a table. And I keep asking, like when I do an interview and ask people, where is the table? If you have a bunch of files in S3, where is the table? Show me the table, right? There's no table. So the abstraction of a table is built somewhere else. And that's what Iceberg does a very good job of. Iceberg does a great job of creating an abstraction of a table, given a collection of files. And not only that, it allows you to atomically modify the table. At the moment, like we don't consider something a table if you can't do atomic modifications of the table. So Iceberg allows you to atomically standard asset properties that a database needs to have, right? It allows you to do all of that, which is great. That is what Iceberg, I think that's the next, I see that as the next wave that is going to happen. In the next few years, people will start adopting Iceberg more and more. And recently, Dremio, the company I work for, came up with another open source project called Project Nessie, which is bringing the notion of branches into tables, into the world of tables. Primarily, I mean, like there are different use cases, but maybe the easiest use case to explain is if you want to update multiple tables atomically at the same time, right? Atomic transactions on multiple tables, which doesn't exist in the data lake today. Iceberg doesn't provide that, so Project Nessie does that.
So which is your favorite domains or applications or use cases which you have worked on, or which is on your wish list?
So I see like all our customers doing everything, right? From finance to reporting to like retail companies trying to figure out what their sales volume is, all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, so to be honest, I mean, we are in the, so Dremio is a tool that our customers use to do what you said, which is analyze data. We don't per se analyze data, right?
Okay.
But our customers do that stuff. And a lot of our customers are finance companies. A lot of our customers are trying to their sales, right? Their retail chains, right? They want to know sales volume, whatever predictions of inventory and everything. Yeah, so So that's a trend I see.
So
Everybody
which means
moving
you
to.
don't get too involved at the end user level for whom the problem is being solved.
Yes. So I understand a lot of the problems because I talk to some customers, but like
Okay.
you said, we provide a tool which end users will use and solve their business problems.
So I would like to pose a question to all three of you, Arvind, Rajan, as well as Vivek. In your career journey, you must have faced, is there a moment where you would have faced a scenario where you would have thought, if we would have a bunch of very passionate comp science, very passionate product development guys, or very passionate UX guys, then probably we would have put this act together in maybe 2 months or 3 months, which otherwise would have taken maybe 1 to 2 years in that particular company. I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I've been in this tech hiring business for now 32 years, and I'm a 85 batch, IIT Delhi chemical engineering guy. So I come across a lot of such CXOs who pose this question to me when I talk to them about Sarthi or events like Pravritti. So would like to hear from all three of you. What is your that one scenario moment where you would have encountered this kind of scenario?
Let me go first, but before I get to that question, Mukesh,
Yeah.
just taking up on what Rajan was talking about, and maybe Vivek's question about what kind of interesting problems we are seeing. We are seeing all kinds of interesting problems. So if you think of opening an account, for example, the expectation from the customer side is that I should be able to open an account in 5 minutes time, end to end, which means you have to submit some documentation, and the documentation has to be understood. These are unstructured documents, so you have to quickly understand what's there in the data, go validate that against government issued APIs, etc., etc. So there's a lot of pattern recognition that happens in there, for example. And to be able to build a model, earlier we used to have rules for if then there's kind of rules saying if this is there, then this is there, then perhaps this is an address, or perhaps this is a name, or perhaps this is Aadhaar number, or whatever else. Now we have deep learning based systems built in, so they're improving all the time. Now imagine that this can be done, this ID verification can be done at a global level. So you can identify ID cards or ID issued documents from anywhere in the world. Okay, now banks can really start to accelerate their development. Or think of companies or banks giving out trade finances. Okay, there's a whole ton of documentation that you have to do with lots of different types of documents, lots of different types of data. And if you had a deep learning engine that extracted all the data, put all the data in all the right workflows, then you could accelerate. Corporate loans can take between 3 months to 6 months to give. Right, you could accelerate that loan from a couple of weeks. Once you accelerate the loan, you can do more. So anytime you can do more in business, the productivity goes up. If productivity goes up, the GDP of the particular institution goes up. The GDP of the country goes up. We all become better as a result of that. Okay. So we are seeing in our business all kinds of interesting dynamics, from text recognition, image recognition, video recognition, to the number theory acquisition that we made, and Rajan referred to that. And since we are a low code application platform, and I had the global products team, it was always on my mind saying, can I go find a low code AI platform that can supplement our low code application development platform? A lot of our customers are large banks and insurance companies and manufacturing companies and retail companies, and we have insurance companies going back 150 years who have got data for 150 years of what life looks like. How can we use that data to start building some kind of profiles of whether a new customer should be given what kind of underwriting, what kind of risk profiles, what kind of default profiles, what kind of penalty clauses we will have, and stuff like that. So you can imagine that banks typically were the first movers in terms of adopting technology since 60s. For example, mainframes have been acquired by banks and insurance companies, so they have data for 50, 60, 70 years, right? How do we translate that data into insights? And although a lot of people have been doing business intelligence and analytics, they're all deterministic in many ways, right? If you do this, then this happens. But really, today's environment requires you to be non-deterministic and more statistics, more finely grained statistics. I remember reading up somewhere that machine learning is advanced calculus at its finest in some senses, right? So looking at that problem, we thought, okay, number theory fits in really well into what we do as a low-code platform. It also gives us this, I would say, appeal, like a technology appeal, where we can motivate young engineers, especially from IITs, etc., to come and work for us. Okay, and they can work on multiple dimensions, on multiple persona of the problem. From data collection and data engineering, understanding where the data is, how to store the data, and Vivek is talking about some large data storage with SQL. There is also another effort to kind of go store in NoSQL kind of databases, and then how does SQL and NoSQL kind of merge together, come together in some senses. There's a lot of feature engineering that data science people are now doing. There's a lot of programming that, Python programming that was being done, but now people are saying, instead of focusing on the programming, let's focus on the modeling part of it, which is what the NT platform kind of gives us. So I think these are the factors which motivated us and myself primarily to acquire NT from a new gen perspective. And now we are trying to take it to the customers globally and say, look, can we integrate our application development with our AI platform so that all applications become smart? So that you and I, when we interact with in any systems, and you talked about government making life easier. When will the life become easier? When we can submit something to the government and we don't have to come back and say, look, it did not work. Okay, things should work very, very smoothly. And AI has that potential of making that smooth approach really, really possible. So, the question that you asked was a little different, but I wanted to give you this context of, where this acquisition started to happen. As I look at where we could be going, or what is the 2 or 3 things that we think will be really, really interesting for us, I think the ability to accelerate the business cycles for our customers will be the most important thing as we go along with it. I think as we we are already seeing requests for prediction kind of problems that Vivek was talking about, sales prediction, but we're also now seeing interesting problems saying we want to provide accident prevention capabilities. So think of automobile manufacturer having the ability that you can track through some sensors the health of your vehicle, and using some anomaly detection you can figure out, is that vehicle going to stop on my customer, or is it going to have some kind of unwanted event, and then give out a message back to the customer saying, look, please get your vehicle checked because we think there's something happening here. In manufacturing, we see a lot of IoT-based anomaly detection and preventive maintenance, for example, happening. And I see data science has this big power that we can start to think of these impact analysis, as you said, okay, and say, what can we do to make it better for customers, get them to have better experiences to their customers, get them to have better operational efficiencies, and get them to have better innovation. Those are the 3 pillars in my mind. But I'll also let Rajan add something.
Bang on, Arvind. I think the question that you asked, Mukesh, has there ever been a situation where you want someone smart who can do things in 2 months rather than 6 months? That is the situation. There is no other situation. That is the situation. But I would say there is something else, and you certainly look for very smart people who can do things faster. But when you are trying to build something non-trivial, something that is built for a scale, what Dremio are trying to do, or what number theory news and combine wanting to do, at a scale, at a very complex level, what you look for people, do they have belief that this can be done? It is more than doing things faster. It may be a little slower. But you think of building something, do I have the team that believes that we can do something? So probably having that belief is a bigger asset. Intelligence is sort of given. If you're not intelligent enough, it's hard for you to come anyway. So it's given, and it's IIT, so we anyway assume that it's intelligent, right? There's no question on that. I think it has to be coupled with the belief that, or the passion that you want to solve some non-trivial problems. I think that is the fundamental skill that is, or principle that we really try to work along as a part of our process to see if you have the belief to solve those kind of non-trivial problems. someone called cultural fit. We can name it in any which way we want to, but that is the skill that stands out.
Yeah, let me give you a little anecdote, Mukesh, and this is from Suhas Patil, who is considered to be one of the founding fathers of the whole semiconductor kind of movement. We were talking about, doing something very quickly in 2 months or 3 months, and he said, Arvind, you can only do a pilot or a prototype in 3 months. To build a product, you really need to understand the industry, and you really need to understand the customer. And if you think of, the semiconductor chip and how it has come up in the Silicon Valley, it probably took them 3 generations of companies to get to where Intel is or Intel became. So good product development takes a long time. Small, prototypes or demonstration concepts can be done much faster, I believe. But Vivek, you may have some insights to
Yeah,
share.
but I think, yeah, thanks. I think very interesting discussion. I want to probably add on to one of the points that Arvind mentioned earlier. So about applications, right? So I think it was about 2013 or 14 when Aadhaar, like UIDAI, was building their entire Aadhaar database. And at that time, Mapr was one of the vendors, right? So Aadhaar was using Mapr under the covers. And the story we used to tell internally and to our customers was, in the future, you'll be able to withdraw money from your ATM account by just showing your fingerprint. And guess what? I mean, yesterday I opened my son's bank account and all I did was give my fingerprint. And so today it is reality, right? And we're seeing all these new applications that are coming out in just in the matter of less than 10 years. Very complex, I would say, because it recognized from the fingerprint, it recognized who I was, matched it with my Aadhaar number, and then it allowed me to open an account for my son. Back to the point about fast building, right? I think both Arvind and Rajan bang on prototype versus product. And for us, both Mapr and Dremio have been very deep tech product companies, which means that you really cannot get things done fast, right? And so the example I tell people is, Dremio has been building this service, right? Software as a service. And you go to the industry today and you have everybody talking about, I build a microservice and whatnot. And typically they get it done in 3 months. And I tell people, Dremio took a year to build it. And I tell people Dremio took a year to build it. And we took a year to build it not because we are stupid or something. It's because we want to make sure we build the right product. We want to make sure that the cost of running the service is as low as possible. It's as scalable, as performant as possible. And it takes time to be able to do all of that. But prototypes are a different ball game, right? You want to build a quick and dirty prototype. That's a very different skill set that you look at, and it doesn't matter. You just go build it to show that it is possible, and then you.
पता वो भी 100 मार्क्स में आगे दिया बहुत शॉर्ट
तूने वो डाल दिया शालीन सुबह भेजा था मैंने नहीं डालना अभी तक
Okay, I guess things are back to normal. Yeah. So we've seen this continuously in the industry, right? I mean, any deep technical product that you want to build takes time. I hear people talk to me about, we improved the performance by 10x. But then when I dig deep, I'm not impressed with the performance improvement that I see, or how they got the performance improvement, right? It's typically you add machines and you get 10x performance improvement. For me, it is not impressive. The question I ask people is, what is the raw hardware performance, and are you getting raw hardware performance? Right? It's not about getting 10x performance improvement. It's easy to get 10x performance improvement over a system that is poorly designed in the first place. The question I flip around and ask is, what is the raw hardware capable of performing? Are you getting that? If you're not getting that, you haven't designed a system that's good enough. Right? And that takes time.
So good.
So sorry to interrupt. Can we ask the participants to put the questions in the chat box if they have for the speakers?
How much time do we have?
Like we have almost 15 minutes left.
Okay, so we'll just
probably
start in
can-
2 minutes. I'll just
Okay, yeah, sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because let me complete the what should I say, the touch points which I have thought about. And so to answer just the context of Aadhaar, I'll like to share one small incident. My son has done MBA from IIT Madras, and I had attended the convocation. And the convocation chief guest was Nandan Nelikani. And one of the key things which he told the students out, that you have learned everything very nice. Are you ready to unlearn tomorrow morning? So that is something which really struck. And I have realized one thing, that it is the guys who are willing to unlearn are actually taking, the rest of them maybe they are taking steps. Some of them are taking baby steps. Some of them are taking small strides. But I think it is the guys who are willing to unlearn are actually taking big strides. So before we move on to these questions, I would like to just quick half a minute or 1 minute from each one of you is what are the kind of roles in AI analytics technologies which are uh, possible in the sense that suppose we need to create a cadre of data professionals. What are the kind of roles? And for each role, what are the subjects or courses or topics which they need to be strong in and which typically the IIT students, whether it is MSc, whether it is MTech, BTech or PhD guys, which they should have, and if they don't have, which are the ones they should just pick up over a period of time. And when you look at IIT guys, what I've done a bit of analysis of why IIT guys do well, especially with respect to a lot of jobs which are uncharted territory. So I also the startup ecosystem. So I realized one thing: they happen to have a certain kind of domain expertise in that particular field, apart from the tech part, apart from the analytical skills. So just a quick one from each one of you, and then we move to the main questions from the students.
I think from my perspective, like I'm not talking about subjects, right? Because
Okay.
but more about skills or
skills.
Yeah. So for me, perseverance, right? Perseverance in the face of hardship, and like you said, nobody knows how to do it. Go figure it out, right?
Okay. Any specific topics or any specific hard skills you would like to talk about, Vivek?
For me, understand I mean, I come from a CS background, so for me, it is how do you understand scale, right? Building systems at scale, what's involved, what exactly is happening at the detailed level, right?
So could you give me an example of how do you assess that? So, for example, if somebody is in class 11,
I mean, I think for
how do you
I
assess
think
that?
for,
Similarly, if
yeah, no,
somebody is in first year or second year
No,
of
that's a good
BTech.
question. It's hard to assess that. I'm sorry. I mean, so this is more for a industry, somebody who's been in the industry for some time. But I would assess largely on perseverance, right? And I probably pick a subject that they learned, and I would take them to an uncharted territory and ask them, can you tell, like they don't know the answer to it. I don't know the answer to it. It doesn't matter. I want them to think out aloud and tell me how things would work at that point of time.
Okay. Arvind?
I would put curiosity and learnability very high on my radar,
Okay. Okay.
especially as you're building products,
Mm-hmm.
to be curious about, what others are doing, what they need, how they will tie up the whole thing together, how it all comes in together. And then to be quickly able to learn a diverse range of technologies, because finally products have integrated multiple technologies to really achieve business outcomes. So those are the two things that I would.
Mm-hmm. So I've seen all three LinkedIn profiles in detail, all of you. So Rajan, I would just like to hear a quick one from you, because you come from a sales and business background. So any one thing which you look for in such people? I think you're on mute.
Sorry, as I said, problem solving is something that is given.
Okay.
You would expect people to be, but the belief that you can solve something that's not easily solvable or not, we have not solved it.
Okay.
We have tried to rationalize that process. The way we hire at number theory is essentially we pick a problem of student's choice, any research paper, any problem, and then jointly we try to solve it. Because this is how it happens in actual life, right? It's not a question answer session. You can Google and answer any question. So why would I have to ask a question? So typically we'll take a problem of student's choice or aspirant choice, whoever is, and then we'll try to solve that problem. It has to be a little non-trivial problem. That essentially gives us the theme about the first principle that I was talking about, your ability to go a little more than required. How are you approaching them? Are you asking the right questions? Stuff like that. And we also get to know. So this is how we are a small team. So this is how we have been hiring. And I think this works wonderfully well.
Okay,
As I
great.
said, problem solving smartness is given.
And
You have
if
to
I
be-
can, if I can just add, I think, Vivek's, perseverance helps you then have overnight success after 7 8 years.
Good. So I think very well put and summarized. Yeah, so we can move to the questions now, Chinmaya.
So all the participants who have any of the questions can put their questions in the chat box. The speakers can answer. Also, I have one question which was coming in my mind. Like we had been discussing that how smooth our lives can be if AI comes up. So, like, how after how much time we can expect that AI revolution in India? Like we see, there are cafes in Japan. There are like many of the things are just automated by robots in like Japan and many other countries. So, how, like, when can we expect that revolution in India also?
It's already here. If you look at Spotify, if you start listening to one song, it automatically picks up your mood and the time of the day and your profile and starts giving you different song recommendations. We may not have robotics because we have a big population, so we don't need maybe so much of robotics in daily lives. But it's already there. I think Spotify, Netflix, Amazon, they all give you AI today.
And
And the vacuum
probably
cleaner, right?
robotics.
I think the S7 or
Yeah,
another brand name, the vacuum cleaner.
that's already in play. The vacuum cleaner.
Probably even the robotics one thing isn't even needed in India because we have so much of manpower that won't be a positive side of that thing.
Well, it will be used. I mean, India is fascinating. We have technologies from 1,000 years ago still prevalent. So we'll have a big diversity.
Yeah, definitely. So we have one question. How a person with a strong mathematics background should go in AI ML industry from scratch, like any roadmap, right way to think approach?
Vivek, you want to take that?
No, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't think I know enough about that. I thought Arvind
I
would
can
be a better person or Rajan would. Yeah.
I,
Yeah,
I,
I think
I
go for
can
it. Yeah.
I can answer it. So essentially, this is a profile that we really look for. The way it works is, remember, first thing I said, the scale, the fundamental mathematics, and then the confluence of the data science and business. The second layer, what happened is, let's say you're trying to solve a problem or you are implementing an algorithm through a paper. generally people with, we have a small team of people who have a strong mathematical understanding, will write the first level of implementation of that paper. And then the background engineering team or platform engineering team will write it for their scale. The first paper may be written in Python, implementation of that, and then we write in a Scala to scale it. So certainly, I think if you have maths background, you are the one, or anyone who has a maths background is the one.
So we have another question by Akshay. Will data analytics have a good future after 10 years also?
Yeah, I think so. It will have a bright future, very great future, in fact. There'll be more data, so there'll be more analytics. Simple,
Yeah.
simple logic.
Anuj has a question directed for Mr. Rajan. What's your thought process when you are finding the solution for a problem?
Reach out to smart people, reach out to your smart team. That is how you solve a problem, right? You don't solve a problem individually. Individual brilliance is certainly very celebrated, but when you're trying to build a company, we're trying to build a product, generally it is not built around one individual brilliance. It's about flashes of brilliance that you get around. You also look at a problem from variety of angles. So think of this whole product development thing. There's one element of building the product. The second element is finding customer who will use this product. Third element is making this customer pay for you. Third is how will you scale it? Will the same product work at this scale? So when you are solving a problem, you basically look at variety of viewpoints on the problem, and then you huddle and solve the problem.
I'd just like to add one point here because I've been involved in creating products for education industry, specifically edtech. So if you are trying to create a product for education, then you should factor the extreme scenarios. So one extreme scenario can be a government school in a rural area, and the other extreme can be a public school in a city area. So these are the various extremes which you should factor. So when, like Rajan said, you should talk to smart people. It basically means that apart from the technology aspect and the usage aspect, it should factor in the extreme use as well as misuse, which can be possible for that particular product.
And of course, there are many frameworks of decision making and whatnot, but fundamentally, you're trying to solve a problem by having multiple views on the problem itself, keeping the endpoint clear.
So we have another question. What is the level of proficiency in AI and ML that is needed for a BTech student to get into the industry?
You want to take it, Arvind?
It's asking the question.
Well, if you are into programming, computer science or programming, and you know Python, that'd be nice to have Python. But you can learn Python, or you can do programming in pretty much any language nowadays. That's not a problem. If you have some mathematics background, you can look at data science and look at algorithms for data classification and data analysis and those kind of things. If you have, there are also jobs which are not really in the programming side of it, but in the infrastructure side of it. Remember, the AI requires a lot of compute. So just like Vivek is dealing with data storage, there's a lot of infrastructure computer science that we need to be able to do this right. So what could be the cloud storage? What could be the cloud distributed, compute? What could be the cloud ML ops, for example? What could be the cloud way of doing things? Lots of interesting infrastructure problems. And then, of course, if you are a little bit interested in the application side, how do I use these models into some business applications? So, if you are interested in AI ML, I'm happy to help you. Get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to help you.
I guess the next question is also answered with Mr. Arvind Jha's explanation. What is the level of coding skills required? So, except for these, we don't have any more questions in the chat box. Anyone
Actually,
who still has a question? Yeah,
Chinmay, I
yes,
saw
sir.
one interesting question which I think we should take, which is, from Shrishti. Will use of AI ML analytics lead to unemployment in the near future? This is like a
Oh,
common,
yes, yeah.
common AI kind of question, and I think the way the way I think of it, and the way I would encourage you to think about it, Shrishti, is that there are lots of tasks and jobs which are fairly repetitive in nature, okay, and they will definitely go away. As AI agents or machine learning agents become smarter, just like the bank teller has gone away and now we have an ATM machine, these jobs will go away. But new jobs get created all the time. In the early 80s, the bank unions were very, very worried that computerization is going to take away all the jobs. But today, if you see, there are more jobs in banking than throughout 80s, for example, we've ever seen. So I think any jobs which do not require any intellect or creativity and have a repeated steps of execution, they will definitely go away. New jobs will get created all the time. That's my take.
I think a question that came, what is there after 10 years? As a student, you don't have to really be worried about next 10 years. Let the life evolve. Your life will radically change in 10 years. Why to plan and worry about next 10 years? Students means we have the luxury to explore things in many ways. 10 years is a long time.
So anyone who still has a question can put that question in the chat box. So I guess we don't have any more questions. Probably Batra sir can give an ending note. Okay, we have another question. Should anyone opt to go abroad for data analytics for better salary?
Get it? Sure. Go ahead. The world is all coming together, so you can work anywhere. It's a lot of changes happening on the job front right now, so for sure.
Okay, so one more question, that how can we connect with you all? Probably an email.
Email, or you can find me on LinkedIn and just leave me a message, and that should be fine.
All our IDs are with OCS, so you can share our IDs with the students. And of course, any internship or project, all of us will be engaged in. So that will happen through OCS only. And we have some plans of engaging with the departments also. So Newgen has some uh, requirements in terms of collaboration with the institute for projects. So for that anyway, we will reach out, and the mail IDs are there.
Okay, so we don't have any more questions. Probably, Batra sir, you can give the ending note. And
Yeah.
it was a really informative session. Thank you to the speakers.
So I think we have captured the major aspects of the approaches and the learnings from the journeys with respect to applications in various domains, oblique verticals. And now we need to get our act together, all of us, and engage with the institute students, whether it's for internships, projects, and placements, and create a process on a long-term basis where we engage. The models of engagement can be different, and it can be customized both ways, from student side also, from the institute side, or sorry, from the organization side also. So we are all good to go, and let's do this together. And in the meantime, I would request Arvind, Rajan, and Vivek that what I mentioned, if we need to create a cadre of such professionals, if we can put a number to this, like some of the questions were like, how many jobs will go and how many will remain active and how many new jobs will get created for any domain or vertical in which Newgen or Vivek is focused on. If we can have some kind of idea there, and the journey of level 1 professional to level 2 to level 3, again, whether you call it data scientist, software engineer, or you data engineer, whatever the names are, and we can just put the act together and then move ahead on this journey. Thank you, everybody, for this wonderful session. A lot of interaction. I guess it must have been useful, and we are welcome to take it, the engagement to the next level. And all queries, any kind of communication is welcome from the institute side also, from my side also, as well as the student side also. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Great meeting you, Vivek.
Hello.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Hello.
Vivek. Thank you, everyone. Bye
Thank
for
you.
now.
Hello.
Yes, Pooja ma'am. Yeah.
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 So I am Pooja from Office of Career Services.